Hello property people. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Mark Gulla. I'm an estate agent in the north of Scotland. Have been since 1989 on or off. And if you're returning, welcome back. I quite often get asked about negotiating offers on properties and the nuances of that. To me, it's part of the fun of the job, really. I call it human chess. The facts are a seller wants the best price they can, and a buyer wants to get that property at the lowest price they can. And in between these two polar positions, there'll be a compromise somewhere perhaps that achieves a sale and everybody's happy. When I do training, occasionally I get my trainees in front of me to do a very simple exercise, and I'll do it here and hopefully you can do it with me. So I would ask you all to put your hand in the air as high as you can. And then I ask this very simple question: can you put it a bit higher, please? And everybody goes like that. That bit at the top is the bit we try and capture as an estate agent negotiating a deal for a buyer to buy a property for a seller, and that's the icing on top of the cake that we try and get for a seller to get a deal done. So the facts are, I would say 90% of the time, no buyer would offer the best price to start with. So I always take that as a starting point on negotiating a property, that no buyer comes in with the best price. A lot of buyers don't understand this very simple premise that the seller is my customer, not the buyer. The seller may become a buyer and become a customer at the other end of their journey, but as a seller, the seller is our customer, not the buyer. Some buyers are very open with their buying power, buying ability, what their maximum figure is, but a lot of buyers make the mistake of saying to me, the estate agent who is acting for the seller, I'll offer them 200,000, but I can go a bit more. Right, okay, thanks for telling me that. Guess what I'm going to do with that particular bit of information? So I would be duty bound to go back to the seller and say, we've got an offer here of 200, please let me go back and ask for some more. The Estate Agency Act 1979 dictates that I'm duty bound to take any buyer of any quality to a seller, whether it's 50 pence or whatever it might be. So that's something that the buyer quite often does, is give their game away. The other way that buyers can give their game away from a seller point of view is they'll register with us or say our maximum budget's 300,000. Great. They're looking at a £250,000 house. Excuse me. Okay, there's a bit of a giveaway there, that we know they can go to 300. They're going at 250. So if they offer 240, I'm obviously going to go back and ask for 260, 270, whatever I can get away with, and see if we can meet in the middle. That's acting for the seller. I do understand from the buyer point of view, because I've bought many properties myself personally over the years. But you know, from a buyer, the information that they leak out is gold for me as a negotiator on behalf of the seller. Buyers quite often ask a question of a seller, and it's a silly question. I'll tell you why it's a silly question, because you shouldn't get an answer. The question the buyers ask is to the seller, how much do you want for your property? Or would you take X amount of money? What the buyer is really saying to the seller is, I want to buy your house, how cheap can I buy it? The answer the seller should give is very simple. Can you give my estate agent a call? I'm paying him to sell my property, and he'll be dealing with all offers. That way, the seller doesn't get into a trap of, oh, I've already agreed 300,000, where I might know I can get to 310 or 315 or 320 or whatever it might be. So that's a tip for sellers: is never show your hand. Simply say, give Mark a call in my case. He's dealing with all offers, and then I can do some negotiating on their behalf and get the best price. Our average start at the moment, excuse me, is 6.7 viewings equal an offer. Out of those 6.7 people, call it 7, out of those 7 viewers, I try, and they're offered an email to ask for feedback so I can give to the seller feedback on the property. And I'm very honest, and if the feedback is I'm not buying it because the wheelie bins smell, I'll tell you, the seller, let's get the wheelie bins cleaned, or another reason. If there's something that we can't do anything about, for example, far too near a road, there's not a damn thing we can do about that, other than be totally upfront and honest in the advertising, and the video that we do would show a road so that it's not a surprise when they come to do the viewing. But the truth is, very often I try phoning a buyer for feedback and they'll blank my number. they won't answer the phone, I'll drop them an email, nothing at all. I would say probably 50% of the time buyers that are not interested don't reply to my telephone call and my emails, or fill in the form that they're asked to fill in after a viewing. But the 1 in 7 that doesn't wait for me to contact them, they're on the phone to me or on the email to me very, very quickly after the viewing, chasing me because they want to put an offer on the property. So from an estate agent's point of view, that's gold, because I know they're keen, very, very keen. So once we've got a keen buyer, my job is to get the best price I can, but also my job is to find out what position the buyer is in. So let's take the worst case scenario. There's a buyer that's not even on the market, that's viewed a property, that wants to offer. The best will in the world, they can't buy that property until they've got their own property sold, unless of course they're a cash buyer. We'd establish that early on. If they want to offer, let's say, 20% over the asking price on a property, and they haven't got their property even on the market, the best will in the world, it's thanks for your offer. In principle, we agree with the offer. Please let us know when you've got your own property sold. In the meantime, we'll keep marketing the property and sending out viewings. What I'm saying as an estate agent there is, you can't have your cake and eat it, okay? You're not going to buy this property and stop other people buying it until you're in a position to actually hand the money over. So really what we do there is we throw the ball back in the court of the buyer to get their house on the market. A lot of buyers expect sellers to say, oh, thanks for the offer, I'll take my house off the market, and you've got an open-ended time to sell your own property. Well, that in practice is a disaster, because as much as I think I might sell my little 200-year-old cottage very quickly, I don't know till we're on the market. So until we're actually on the market and get an offer, I couldn't then go buy another property. And that's how I treat the clients. There are exceptions here and there. We do occasionally have cash buyers that don't need to sell. The downside of that in Scotland is that you would then become what's called a second homeowner. You'd have that additional dwelling tax to pay. That's currently sitting, I think, at 8%. So you'd have to find the purchase price plus an additional 8%, of which you can claim back, assuming you sell your own property within, I believe it's 18 months, you would be able to claim that back as a tax. So there's a few red flags involved in cash buyers as well, as much as it may sound good, that are still in an existing property. If they're a cash buyer and they're unrented, yeah, great, they can proceed. If they're a buyer that needs a mix of cash and mortgage, same sort of thing really. Have you got a mortgage agreement in place yet? No, not yet. Okay, thanks for your offer. In principle, we agree. Really, you need to get your mortgage in place before we can take this any further. In the meantime, we'll keep carrying on doing viewings and marketing the property. Mortgages can take weeks and weeks to organise. Yeah, that's the same as getting your house in the market, getting cash. Would have to have that in place. Equally, do you have a solicitor in place as well? And this is quite pertinent. I've got a closing date Monday. I'm filming this on Saturday afternoon. I've got a closing date on Monday. I've given everybody a week's notice when we set the closing date. And one of the things that they would have to do is have a solicitor in place to place the offer, that if it's acceptable, they can proceed with that. I had a case a few years back, and I remember it was a Saturday doing viewings on a lovely property, amazing views, just an idyllic Highland property. I think I had 6 viewings on one morning on Saturday, and 2 people wanted to buy. One had a mortgage in place, had a solicitor in place, and was ready to go. The other one had none of the above, and the one that didn't have anything organised took till the Wednesday of the following week to actually get their offer in place, by which time it was too late. The sellers had accepted another offer from somebody that was already ready to go. So these are the things that as a seller or representing a seller, I have to make sure are in place, or at least examine, so that we can actually proceed with a property. Putting that in numbers, in Scotland, and the stats that we've got, the 300 odd or 400 houses we sell a year, our stats are we've got a 96% success rate of offer accepted to handing the keys over. And that's down to doing due diligence on the buyer, make sure the buyer is a proper buyer, not a maybe if. If they aren't in a position to proceed, we just say thanks for your interest. We'll note interest for you on our system, and we'll let you know if there's a closing date, and if there's not, you please let us know when and if you're willing, when you're ready to put the offer in formally with your money in place, your property under offer or sold. and solicitor in place. We caveat to that, given we've got 96% success rate of offer accepted to exchanging contracts, and this is concluded as it is in Scotland. In England, in Ireland and Wales, I understand that the success rate can be as low as 60%. So there's a bit further due diligence to people buying out with Scotland, in so much as, given you've got such a high failure rate of proceeding, because the legal system is different, we would ask that you have exchanged before you are formally accepted in Scotland. Again, back to the numbers, 96% success rate. If you've only got a 60% success rate, I hear, in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, then me representing the seller wouldn't want to put the seller at risk of not being able to proceed with their forward purchase. So that's from a seller point of view. From a buyer point of view, I've been a buyer myself, and I obviously represent buyers and talk to them all the time. As a buyer, I would find out as much as I can about the property. I would look at the Scottish Register and find out what the history of the property is from what it's been sold for recently. That's free for anybody to have a look at. I would have a look at it and see the date on the home report, but more importantly, the date on the property questionnaire part of the home report, because the home report can be refreshed through time. After 3 months, the mortgage valuation within the home report is deemed to be out of date. So it may have been refreshed at some point, but the date in the property questionnaire remains the same. So that tells you when that was originally filled in. At the moment, we're sitting at, I think, 73, 79 days on average to sell a property. It's been as low as 11 days in July 2022. I've had it as long as 53 weeks in 2010 after the financial crash. So it gives you an indication of how long the property's been on the market. So talk to an estate agent in your area that you're buying. What's the average time to sell a house? And if it's, in our case, I'm sure it's 79 days last time I checked. If it's been on the market 9 months, that could flag up a problem, but also an opportunity to buy the property a bit cheaper as a buyer. You can have a look at the date on Rightmove and find out if and when it's been reduced. I think it tells you there when it has been reduced. And you can do a lot of research. If the property's empty, for example, I'm selling my late mother's house at the moment. It's empty. We've got it sold. It's concluding next month. If it's an empty property, then somebody's paying insurance on that property. Somebody's probably paying 200% council tax, community charge. So there'll be costs involved in that insurance. I don't know, for my own self, I've had to reinsure my mum's house during the sale. Mum's house is quite big with a garden, so I'm paying a gardener. So there'll be additional costs on an empty property as well as additional hassle. And that can perhaps help you negotiate a better deal, given you know those facts. And also, this is going to sound arrogant, but not all estate agents are the same. Some estate agents don't have the bottle to negotiate, play chess with people. I personally absolutely love negotiating a deal, but not all. A lot of estate agents that maybe aren't as long as the tooth and eye will just say, "There's your offer, 300,000. We advise you accept." Back to stick your hand up as high as it can, a little bit more. You might not get a little bit more, but it's good fun asking. And at some point, the buyer will say enough. But anyway, talking as buyers, have a maximum figure in your head. Don't tell anybody. Start low, because you can always increase. The only caveat to that is if it's a closing date, which I've got one on Monday, you can't then come back and say, "Oh, I can offer more." So offer your best price you can on a closing date, because you then know you're up against, as a minimum, of one other person. So there'll be 2 offers as a minimum you're up against on a closing date. So you can't muck about with figures then. You've got one opportunity to buy that property, put your best offer in. Find out what's important to the seller. I'm selling a property at the moment, and what's more important to them is the quality of the buyer, i.e. in rented, sold, missives concluded. Out with that, they don't even want viewings. And there's a reason for that. The reason is they've secured a deal that they don't want to miss out on their next property, and they want security over the volume of money. They're willing to concede £5,000-10,000 perhaps on a buyer that's sitting and rented with a mortgage in place and cash in the bank, as opposed to somebody that's still got to complete their transaction on their existing property. So find out what's important to the seller. Is that a timescale thing? Timescale quite often is an issue. The longest I've had is 13 months from offer accepted to entry date. The shortest I've had is just under 2 weeks. So depending on buyer and seller requirements. It might suit the buyer to have a long entry date. It might suit the seller to have a long entry date, but that's something that's negotiated at some point before missives conclude. Interestingly, sometimes sellers choose buyers, nothing to do with money. It's to do they like them. And I very regularly, I suppose that the Highland communities are renowned for this. I very regularly say I want somebody nice to be a neighbour for my neighbours, because I've known my neighbours 25 years now. We're really friendly. Sometimes one of the best things you can do if you, as a buyer, and get to meet the seller, is just have a general chat and tell them what your plans are for the future. In fact, I had a property 2 weeks ago with 2 offers on, identical offers. And the one that won it was, I think the seller said, I really like them. And that's what won it. So there's no point as a buyer trying to upset or offend a seller. In fact, I had a seller not that long ago, actually, similar thing. In fact, there was 2 offers come in, one a lot less than the first one. And the first one didn't get it because they were proudly telling the owners, the sellers, that they were going to rip up the garden that the sellers had put their heart and soul into and put pods on it. And they said, I just couldn't live with driving past my old house with my beautiful garden dug up. Sometimes you just need to say less is more when you're a buyer talking to a seller, and find out, quite often I ask sellers, mainly to get a steer on what they feel about the property. I ask this very simple question: why did you buy this property? Listen to what they say. So ask that question. Most people ask, why are you moving? No, it's irrelevant why they're moving. It's irrelevant why they bought it as well. But if you know why a seller actually bought a property, that just helps you with more information as to what's going on in the seller's minds. So that's the art of negotiating. Human chess, as I call it. I absolutely love doing it. A lot of estate agents are embarrassed to do it. The sellers pay my wages basically, and I've got to do my best for the sellers. And I did one, I'll not tell you where it was, but did one about 10 miles away where I live. And I can't remember the figures, but I asked this question of the buyer, and I'd got on well with buyers. I'd try my very best to get on well with everybody, because there's no point in antagonising and annoying people. I simply asked this question: have you got £2,000 down the side of the sofa? They went, yeah, we do. Guess what? Got another £2,000 for the seller, so we're all happy. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed the little monologue on negotiating. One of the highlights of my job. I absolutely love doing it. So if this is of interest to you, put a wee comment below. Also, if there's any other ideas of what you might want to see on these kind of how-to or behind the scenes estate agency, all that type of stuff, by all means just drop a wee note below, and I'll think about making another video. I'm thinking about doing a video of the legal system between Scotland and out with Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland primarily, and the differences there. But also buying from overseas as well. We get 2 or 3 buyers a year from overseas that buy here, so it's a fairly simple process. Anyway, that's enough for now. Thank you very much for watching.